All right, Tash. I was just telling you, there are not many people who I talk to. I think your life is crazier than mine. You're one of the few. And I did read recently, however, that you're having a change of mindset. and
That's
and
what
it
they
seems like,
want to
are
think.
you turning on us? Are you becoming one of the farmers? I know you just did an
Maybe.
action like this. Yeah. No, that actually is great, where this person comes up to you and thinks they're not who you are, and you're pretending you're a farmer. Everyone should just go check it out on Instagram. But it's hilarious because this person I think you just randomly met someone who starts talking shit about you and doesn't realize that you are Tash Peterson.
That's exactly what happened. I was a farmer in disguise. I was just filming Jack do, his undercover farmer like outreach. And this guy just came up to me as I'm filming and starts bad mouthing me.
Yeah. You've had some wild experiences, because when you're doing community service, you were also kind of with somebody who apparently was like an admin in the anti-Tash Peterson Facebook group or something like that. And then was he under a legal order? He was like harassing and stalking you, ended up doing community service with you. And can you tell that story? What exactly happened there?
Yeah, well, I'm not actually entirely sure why he was doing community service. It had nothing to do with me or anything like that. But yeah, he has been quite an invested fan of mine for since the end of 2019, because I actually remember him messaging me after one of my first big disruptions that I did in a supermarket, and he reached out to me and just started talking to me. I don't think he was too impressed with my activism, and I was telling him about animal rights and stuff. And ever since that day, he's just been so invested in what I do. He's a moderator of the anti-Tash Peterson Facebook group. He's actually come to my court appearances and come in the courtroom just to sit and watch. And it's quite unusual, but I just happened to be at the same community service center as him on the same day. And because he follows me so obsessively, he knew that I was on a community-based order and had already put in a complaint to say that essentially he does not want to be near me. So he ended up leaving that day when I rocked up.
That's wild.
Which is quite unusual. I've never threatened him or done anything bad towards him. If anything, it's obviously the other way around, because he's so obsessed and invested with my life and what I'm doing.
Yeah. I think there's such important lessons for everybody who's vegan there, though, because I think a lot of times people, we're afraid of the negative reactions, right? We think that the problem is, oh man, someone's getting angry. In your case, not only getting angry, but they're starting a Facebook group about how much they hate you. They're kind of borderline stalking you, and they're so upset about everything you're doing. But in many ways, that's a sign of progress. And I don't mean to minimize the danger that poses to you, because it's fucking creepy to have someone stalking you. But the real alternative is for people to ignore us entirely. And it's like Gandhi said, almost 100 years ago, first they ignore you, then they fight and hate you, then you win. And you really can't skip that step. That part of what we are doing as activists is provoking people with the truth. And there's going to be people who hate us. And that's okay, accepting that as part of the bargain. And I think, honestly, that's one of the geniuses of your activism, the fact that you and Jack just aren't afraid of being hated. And there's something really magical that happens just from that strength. But speaking of getting hated, I can't even keep track of all the different cases you're in right now. But can you just summarize to me? I mean, I know that you were convicted recently, and you were also, among other things, barred from leaving Western Australia. You had an injunction served against you that banned you from certain hotels after you had already checked in. I don't even understand how the hell that happened. I want to hear that story. But give us like a quick summary of just the legal status that you're in right now, and like why all these court cases seem to be coming to a head right now.
Yeah, well, I think since we last spoke in July, I have been convicted with 5 criminal offences. Wow. So that was late July, where I was convicted with 3 offences. And that was a result of a protest that I did inside a restaurant who had announced they'd banned all vegans from their venue. And that was probably my highest exposure protest I've ever done. It was just awesome the amount of exposure it received, but obviously
and they
that led
assaulted
to
you and you got convicted. I mean, that video, go watch it. They assaulted you and you get convicted. It's wild.
Yeah, it is, and they don't get charged at all.
Mhm.
They get away with it. Every single person who's assaulted me has never been convicted. Only one person had been charged, and they dropped the charges because she was an 80-year-old woman. So yeah, those were the 3 convictions. I was actually going to take it to trial, and I was all ready to go. Obviously, you know, I want to fight as many charges as I possibly can. But on that day, my lawyer said to me, look, they are trying to get you in jail. You have been convicted so many times now that you are on that pathway.
Yeah.
And so she just advised, for the best outcome possible, to just plead guilty. And it was just quite overwhelming in that moment, hearing it, like just trying to make a decision on the spot, feeling really stressed out. Like, what decision do I make? Do I just keep going and say, no, I'm taking this to trial? Which I did. I said it twice. No, I'm taking it to trial. And then she'd go and talk to the prosecutor and she'd sort of come back. And I don't know if some of it was kind of scare tactics coming from the prosecutor and stuff like that. But in the end, I was like, oh, I think I'm just going to have to plead guilty and do it. And so, yeah, I was obviously convicted. They did drop one of the charges because it was 4 charges in total as a result of those protests at the restaurant. And I was also put on a community-based order, which meant 30 hours of community service and prohibited from leaving the state of Western Australia.
So the injunction preventing you from leaving was a result of that conviction. That's why they basically have trapped you in Western Australia. And just to paint the picture, was it the beginning of the year that you did this protest at the restaurant?
No, it was in July last year.
So it was a year ago, or more than a year ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't recall this protest, it went mega viral, but there was a restaurant that, and go watch our first episode of Tash, because Tash explained what happened there. But there was a restaurant that had basically someone say, hey, I thought you said you had a vegan option. I even came here specifically because you told me you were going to make something special for me for like a birthday or some special event where they had a vegan option. And then you brought out like lettuce, or maybe, it was something like that, something stupid. And it didn't seem like the complaint was that aggressive. It was just like, hey, you promised me something you didn't deliver. And the restaurant responds by banning all vegans. Talk about escalating quickly. It's like, someone has a complaint about your vegan option and you say, we're banning all vegans. And for the record, that would be unconstitutional in the state of California, because you cannot ban someone from a space that's otherwise open to the public because of their political or moral beliefs in the state of California. And so I don't know if you have rules like this in Australia, but in California, that would be totally unconstitutional and illegal. But all you do is you come back and do a little protest, and it's a little loud to be sure, but I think you were in there. It felt like you were in there for like 30 seconds because they physically assault you and remove you from the restaurant, right? It wasn't much longer than 30 seconds, was it?
Yeah, maybe 30 to 60 seconds.
Yeah, it wasn't long.
Yeah, it wasn't long at all.
They assault you. They're like shoving and attacking you. And then afterwards, this woman is in your face and screaming at you. And I think they batter you again. I mean, they're like touching you and shoving you. And you get charged for it. And now you have these 3 convictions that as a result, you're basically trapped. You're not allowed to leave Western Australia, which is preposterous to me. But I have to say, having a lot of experience with criminal cases, I totally understand your sense of tension and regret and taking a plea bargain. And I don't know if your lawyer was an animal rights person, but it is the case that most traditional criminal defense lawyers, they don't want to take cases to trial for a lot of reasons, but partly because it's just a lot of work. It's a lot of work to defend a case, and it's easier for the lawyers. And I'm not trying to cast aspersions on your particular attorney, because I imagine she probably had a good faith belief that it was a good deal for you, but they have an incentive to convince themselves it's a good deal because it means less work for them. Was this someone who's a public defender? Did you know this attorney well? Do you trust them? Are they an animal rights person?
No. She did reach, yeah. Well, she did reach out to me and offered to do pro bono work for me. So she awesome sounds like genuinely passionate. I think more so for the unjust
prosecution.
and all of like people assaulting me and never being convicted. Like, I think that actually angers her. So I know that she was coming from a good place.
Yeah.
And she said she's seen, animal footage that I've shown, like, for example, Dominion and stuff, but I'm not entirely sure because my previous lawyer is no longer acting as a lawyer. So I had to find someone new. So she's still kind of new to me. I don't know her well enough yet, but I know she has good intentions, but that did come across my mind too. And that, it's just such a hard decision to make for the exact reasons that you've just said. Like, is this for the true intentions of the best decision to make for me as an animal rights activist or not? Like, it was just very overwhelming in that moment, especially just being told, look, they're trying to get you in jail now. That's kind of scary to hear.
It is, yeah. So I've never taken a plea before in my life. And I don't know how many dozens of cases. And I have gone to jail. So there's at least one time I gambled and it didn't work out. Although even jail, I mean, I don't know what Australian jails are like. US jails are definitely shitty, but it wasn't the worst experience. But part of the reason I was able to do that is because I am a lawyer and I knew I could represent myself. I understand the legal system. And I will say this. There is a huge difference between movement lawyers and non-movement lawyers, because movement lawyers understand the importance of fighting these cases and understand how to fight them effectively. Because a non-movement lawyer, they're just like, oh my God, you got this crazy vegan. She's running around. She's naked. She's spilling blood everywhere. I don't even know how to explain this to anyone. While movement lawyer says, look, I get it. When you've heard the screams of the animals in gas chambers, when you've seen animals flailing as they were being eviscerated alive on a slaughterhouse, what are you supposed to do? It kind of reminds me of that Kanye West song where he says, you should be honored by our lateness, or honored by my lateness. I feel like the non-vegan world should be honored by how peaceful we are relative to the urgency of this moment, because the fact that all we're doing is protesting and screaming and yelling, I don't think violence is ever justified, to be clear. I think it's always wrong to engage in violence against any animal, human or non-human. However, to the extent violence would be justified in a social movement, there are more animals being tortured and killed right now on the planet Earth than every human being who's lived on the planet Earth in the history of this planet. The animals would be totally justified from a purely moral perspective, if you think violence is ever justified, and using violence in self-defense. But we never do that because we are a non-violent movement, or at least I don't think we should, and it rarely occurs. And a non-movement lawyer just doesn't know how to explain this well, and doesn't understand the importance of fighting these cases and potentially winning them. But for all the people out there who are animal advocates and wondering what your place in the movement should be, I will say one place that I think there is some need is people defending activists in the court of law. Because, as you've seen, it is a struggle to fight these cases when you're a non-lawyer. And if you've got great lawyers, and we're lucky that, we got me, and then we got a bunch of other lawyers in the United States who are fighting for animals and defending activists, it makes things a lot easier for the people who are going out there and doing direct action and protest. So I don't know. Do you think this lawyer is going to go vegan, or is she already vegan?
I don't think she is vegan. She did describe that she was very disturbed watching the gas chamber footage and hearing the screams of the animals. So I feel like probably, especially if she continues to represent me, she's going to learn more and more on the way. So hopefully she will go vegan.
Yeah. Did you know all these terms are going to be put in place, like the basically trapping you in Western Australia when you took the plea, or was that something the judge imposed after you pled?
I knew that my lawyer did tell me the prosecution was pushing for the community-based order, but honestly, I just didn't know what that entailed. I just knew, all right, that just means doing community service. I didn't know that I was going to be barred from leaving the state until receiving the documents.
Yeah. How did you feel when you got this and you realized you're kind of effectively trapped?
Yeah, it felt awful. I think that whole day was just so stressful because usually when I go into a court trial for a hearing, I feel good. I'm like, bring it on. Like, I'm here to be in court, to present the facts, to speak up for animals. But this day was just completely different because it was just like, okay, this pressure of what decision do I make? And then just having to plead guilty and feel like I was letting the animals down in a sense because I wasn't bringing it to trial, and then just receiving that order and being like, this is the one time I just want to leave Western Australia. They are really trying to shut me down, and I just feel so helpless and upset right now. I actually bawled my eyes out when I was being convicted, because the magistrate was just victimizing everyone subjected to my protests. Oh, the poor people eating at that restaurant, the poor business owner, and just all this crap. And I was just like, just thinking about the animals, like, lady, you have no idea what is happening right now to these animals. Yeah. And yeah, it was just awful. But, you know, I pick myself up pretty quickly after this, and I was all good the next day. Yeah. But yeah, it was just that one day that was just so overwhelming.
Yeah. If there's anyone who's not letting the animals down, it's you. I hope you never feel that way, because I will tell you, as a lawyer, there are so many times where it is absolutely the right call to plead. Because you've got to live to fight on another day. And there's a lot of really important activism that you need to do. And it's just hard to do activism in jail. I can say this from personal experience. I mean, there's some things you can do, but especially for your style of activism, where so much of it is around social media and it's like visually dramatic things. And I mean, you and Jack are like geniuses about this stuff. Like, your videos are so powerful. Like, it's hard to do that when you're sitting in a jail cell and there's not a camera or the access to social media you need, or even really the opportunity to communicate with the outside world other than by sending a couple of letters. And I don't doubt that if you put your mind to it, you could start writing and have really effective letters, but that's still not going to be the same style of activism and the same impact as you've had. So don't ever feel bad about, from my perspective as a lawyer, because it's so important that we support activists in taking whatever deal they need to take so they can live on to fight another day, you know?
Yeah, of course.
Was this, so did the prosecution make this offer basically right on the brink of trial? Were you in court to basically start the trial when this offer came down?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
I just mean, was the trial about to start and they gave you this offer, or was this like a pre-trial hearing?
Yeah. So yeah, this happened all before, like on the day when it was supposed to go ahead with trial. Yeah. Before, just on the outside of the courtroom, the prosecution just approached my lawyer saying, look, I'm happy to drop one of the charges if she just pleads guilty to all of these. I'm pushing for a community order, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And basically threatened you and said, we're going to bring the hammer down and throw this person in jail if they don't take the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's messed up. Were the witnesses from the restaurant there? Like, did you have to plead guilty in front of this dude? Oh, yeah, that's the worst, isn't it? Yeah. How did they respond? Did you talk to them after? I guess you probably can't talk to them. They probably barred you from talking to them, huh?
They haven't barred me. The restaurant owner did attempt to put a violence restraining order on me, but I took that to trial and was successful.
Yeah. That's rich, because you could ask for one against him.
Exactly. I mean, he blatantly assaulted me.
I know, the audacity of assaulting a woman and then saying, isn't that just like such a great demonstration of the hypocrisy and absurdity of this entire system, though, that someone, because they're doing the same to the animals. They're saying, you know, we're assaulting you and you deserve it. This is what you, and if you resist, you know, or anyone resists on your behalf, we're going to punish you for just merely trying to stop us from hurting you or hurting animals. It's like, wow. Wow.
Yeah. And on top of that, a defamation, he's suing me for defamation. So that is just in the beginning process.
So there's still another case around that protest. Wow. Yeah. Man, I wish I could represent you in Australia and fight, because I imagine this is exhausting.
Would be great.
It'd be nice. I should look at, actually, I can't even travel to Australia, unfortunately. So I definitely can't represent you, but yeah, we need to, I should look into this. So my good buddy, Justin Marceau, is a professor of law and very distinguished. He's written all these books on animal law and animal rights law, and he's got connections all over the world. So maybe I'll ask him if he knows anyone in Australia, because it doesn't seem like, I don't know of any like great Australian animal rights lawyers. It doesn't seem like there's anyone who's like a big time animal rights lawyer in Australia, is there?
No, I don't think so. I think there's a few in Victoria, but that state's very far from me. There's absolutely no one that I know of in Western Australia. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So what else has been going on? You've got this case, and then you've got another case involving, well, actually, why don't you tell me? I'm trying to remember what the other cases are. There's another one involving you like pouring blood or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I was recently convicted. It was just a couple of weeks ago for criminal damage and disorderly conduct as a result of the pouring of the fake blood on the butcher store, which was just before the day before Christmas Eve last year. Again, my lawyer said I was going to take it to trial, and my lawyer sort of said to me, well, given what they're trying to do to you for your previous convictions, my recommendation is that you just plead guilty. Otherwise, they're going to come down even harder on you. And so again, I had to make that decision and just go ahead with pleading guilty. Thankfully, I didn't receive another community-based order as a result of those convictions, which I was honestly quite surprised about. It was just fines and convictions. So, yeah, there's not much that came out of that, really.
So basically, that one was just a fine, and then you're off. You're on your way. Yeah. Which, I mean, even the fines themselves, they can start adding up because this is like thousands and thousands of dollars they're fining you, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All the legal fees are quite a lot.
Yeah.
And fines.
And do you have public defenders in Australia? If there's no one who's representing you pro bono, do you get free counsel, like free attorneys from the state? Or do you not have that in Australia?
I think we do have that. I think you still have to pay some money.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. I think they're called duty lawyers. I think I've used a duty lawyer once before, but the rest of the time I've just used normal lawyers because they've either done pro bono for me or I've just had to pay.
Cough it up.
Them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the United States, we have this thing called the public defender system. And everybody has the right under the Sixth Amendment to counsel in a criminal case. So if you can't pay for an attorney, the government will basically provide you one. And there are some good public defenders, for the record. One of my colleagues and co-counsel in a number of animal rights cases is a former public defender himself. His name's Chris Caraway. He's amazing. He works really hard for his clients. But at the same time, public defenders are notorious for doing a terrible job and basically being the worst lawyers. And there are cases where public defenders have literally slept through a trial, like fallen asleep during their client's trial because they're drunk or just not paying attention, or they've got too many cases. And the U.S. government and U.S. courts have ruled this still counts. Even when your attorney is drunk or on drugs or just asleep during the trial, it still counts as you having representation. And so a lot of people are basically choosing between having a lawyer in theory, but really someone is just sitting around doing nothing during the case, and going out there and paying potentially tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to find someone who's actually going to be competent. And it's tough because, obviously, like, the money you should be spending it on things that actually matter, not just trying to defend yourself from getting thrown in jail.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How did you feel after that one? Did that feel good at the outcome?
I guess it was a bit of a relief because, as I said, like, I was expecting another community order, potentially receiving 100 hours of community service or something like that. So I guess it was a relief in that sense, but it just still sort of felt like that same sort of feeling, just a bit helpless and sort of thinking like, what do I do from here? Because if I do continue to commit jailable offenses, then that's what's going to happen. I'm going to end up in jail. Yeah. And thankfully there are other states in Australia that are nowhere near as draconian as Western Australia. Like, it's really harsh here. So I do have the option of going interstate and still continuing my protests, but it just feels a bit helpless here because, I have to be really careful essentially with what I'm doing. So it's just a bit difficult at this point in time.
Yeah. This system of justice that we call criminal justice, not just in Australia and the United States, but around the world, it is basically intended to make you feel powerless. Like, every experience I had with the criminal justice system, the one thing that is very clear in your interactions with the criminal justice system is every contact, even before you've been convicted, when you're arrested, when you're booked, when they jail you, when they release you, they are controlling you and trying to make you feel like you're a piece of shit, you are worthless, and you have no power, and you must comply. And it's a little scary, honestly, that is the way our entire society is constructed in a lot of ways. It's just based on this this sense that we have power over you and you cannot stop us from literally putting you in a cage if that's what we want to do. And I've written and talked about this before, but there are deep parallels between what happens to animals and what happens to activists, especially, but really even to so-called real criminals. There are a lot of people in jails in the United States, at least. I think Australia is not quite as bad as the United States, but like in the United States, we have one of the highest rates of incarceration in the world. We throw so many people in jail for extremely long sentences for the dumbest stuff. Like, you smoked pot 3 times and got caught 3 times. And now you're in federal prison for this is relatively rare nowadays because there's been a lot of reform in the United States.
Yeah.
But one example of that is activism. I think the criminal justice system just is not constructed to manage people who are violating norms because they're trying to make the world a better place. They just don't know how to handle it. And treating people like you who are trying to make the world a better place, who are not doing something selfish. You're not trying to take something from someone. You're trying to help someone. You're trying to help the animals. The criminal justice system is just profoundly and fundamentally incapable of handling that situation in a reasonable way. And I'm sorry you're dealing with the brunt of that. But on the other hand, it's fucking righteous too. It's really righteous. And I hope you're getting support. Do you feel like the Australian movement is coming around and supporting you through all this?
Definitely. I mean, more so online. In person, unfortunately, as we discussed last time, just particularly the Perth community, there's obviously plenty of lovely people, but I just don't really see any of them, and there's just a lot of conflict. So in person, it does feel a bit lonesome. It sort of just feels like it's just me and Jack with a few support networks in our families and a few other activists. But online, there's so many people in Australia and around the world that are just so supportive.
Yeah.
But I guess it's not the same as in person, right? It's just, I'll receive a lovely message and it'll be really beautiful, but it's not the same as having that in-person support, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And, I wish I could be there. I'd be there in core support and bring you guys a bag of goodies and a plate of cookies or something, or whatever it is that you guys like. I agree. It's hard. It's hard to fight the government and the industry, these massive, powerful systems, and come out and feel like you're alone. So, just know that even across the pond, there are a lot of people in the United States who are following these cases and saying you're doing righteous work and we got your back. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, to think after all these years, I learned the last time we had the conversation, the first time he got arrested was supporting me. And I was like, oh my God. On the one hand, I feel really inspired, but then I feel like, holy shit, I kind of ruined this woman's life. I'm just kidding. I know, I kind of feel like you were going in that direction anyways. And I actually don't feel bad because I think the work you're doing is so righteous that I feel proud of it. I'm like, wow, this person got started doing an action with me. But yeah, it's super intense. And yeah, the in-person stuff around the world has been rough. We get a lot of support online too. But so, for example, we did this training recently, and it's partly because I did a terrible job of promoting it, and our team was focused on other things. And we're about to defend another activist in a trial, and basically exactly 2 weeks we're starting another trial, but not me this time. So but in many ways it's even scarier when it's not me, because when it's me, I just feel like, who cares? If I fuck this up, it doesn't matter. I go to jail, but it's just me. But it's scarier when I have a client and I'm thinking, oh my God, if I mess this up, this person can go to jail and be locked in a cage. But, we get so much support online and it's great, to get all these people saying oh, you're amazing and thank you for this work. But we did a training where I was trying to teach people how to do open rescues 2 weekends ago, and only 5 people showed up. And it was very sad. And granted, the 5 people were awesome, and 5 people, who knows, if all 5 of those people go out there and do amazing direct action, it's totally worth it. And it's worth it anyways, because every person you talk to about doing activism, you see them develop and grow and become, I don't know who you never know when you're going to meet Tash Peterson. And everybody, I really do believe everybody has the capacity, not to do exactly what you do, because you definitely have a unique charisma, and you and Jack have a unique style, but everyone has the capability of doing something like that can reach millions of people and change the world if they're just willing to push their boundaries. And this is one of the things I talk to you about, and I talk to Jack about this too, that fundamentally the thing that you have, people might say oh, I'm not as beautiful as Tash, or, I'm not I'm not as good at videos, or I'm not as well spoken, whatever their excuse is, or not even excuse, whatever the self-doubt is that's holding you back. The thing that you have to overcome to be effective is just understanding that you can be brave. Like all these boundaries that people aren't willing to cross. Maybe for one person, it's just writing. Like I'm scared to write, and I'm a very good writer, but I feel like, well, if I write about animal rights, I'm gonna have some troll attacking me. Another person, it could be, doing just animal sanctuary work and just spending a lot of time getting filthy and cleaning out pens and cages, and think, oh yeah, I mean, one of my life is going to think it's so weird if I just spend all this time caring for animals. Like they're going to think I'm some sort of juvenile, or especially for guys, they might think like, man, this is really what I want to do. It's my calling. But like caring for animals, that's not like a bro thing to do. All the people in my community are going to laugh at me. And the fundamental thing people have to realize is we just got to get out there and do it. Don't worry so much about what people think. Find your calling, understand what you think is right. And I'm not saying be an asshole about it, because don't be arrogant and disregard other people's opinions entirely. Like we should have good conversations about tactics and strategy and all that stuff. Respectful conversations, thoughtful conversations, not attacks and insults and trying to bring people down. But fundamentally, the main problem isn't that people are not spending enough time thinking about things. I mean, people are thinking a lot about things. Just people aren't doing enough action. They have to just realize, look, there's a lot of reasons not to do this, but there's also one really important reason to do it, which is the animals need us. And they cannot act themselves because they're trapped in cages and crates. They're literally being torn to pieces alive. They need us. And so whatever it is that is your calling, just push yourself to do a little more. And you've done that very well. So, I'm sorry you've gone through all these troubles, but like I'm super, super inspired. Like every time I see you talking about these cases or all these injunctions, I'm just thinking to myself, we need more people like Tash Peterson, because we do.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's all absolutely worth it. I mean, the small amount of stress that I'm subjected to in Backlash is obviously nothing in comparison to what the animal victims are being subjected to. So yeah, you're exactly right about being brave and not letting other people bother you and judge you. Like leave that behind and push yourself out of your comfort zone, because you're exactly right. It just, that's all it takes, is just taking that first step and giving something a go to speak up.
Yeah. What has been the hardest thing for you in all these cases? Is it just the police, or is it the uncertainty? Is it the money? I mean, what is the hardest thing?
I guess just the constant like legal resistance, the police coming after me, putting in huge resources to try and do everything to shut me down. And that extending to the public as well. Like earlier, as you mentioned, rocking up at a hotel and then having to leave 2 hours after checking in and receiving a barring notice and being like, what on earth?
Well, yeah.
And I guess, there's not many times where I go to have a break, but I know it's important to look after myself and take a break so I can come back stronger and think about new ideas for my activism. So that hotel was just a small moment of having a break, but really it's not a break because something always happens.
Yeah.
And I'm at the same time, I'm actually really grateful that it happens. I mean, that video of me being kicked out of the hotel received over 5 million views on TikTok alone. Wow. So it's like, okay, this is just like another form of activism, like all this backlash, and it generated media attention too. So it's all a good thing, but it is hard to just constantly go through that.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like this constant weight around your neck when you're embroiled in the legal system and you can never take it off. And it's really, really hard. And this is why you need people in the movement supporting people going through these cases, because it's hard to have this massive weight hanging around your neck. But if you've got other people to help you hold it up, and even just for a moment, for you to be able to take a break, to go to a hotel or go on a vacation, just say, like, I'm not going to think about this for a moment because I got a legal team who's going to handle this week, or someone else is going to do the protest this week. So I know there's still going to be social media going out there about the animals. It helps a lot. Have you heard of the backlash effect in social movement theory? You could probably guess what it is.
No. Yeah, I can guess, but what is it?
Yeah, so there's this professor of law at Harvard Law School who studied movements for legal change specifically. And he's looked at the civil rights movement, the gay rights movement, and other movements, and found that oftentimes when you think about activism, it's not actually the activism directly that creates change. It is the backlash against the activism that leads to unjust incarceration. And Martin Luther King Jr. and the activists in Birmingham in the United States are the most famous example of this. Like, the letter from a Birmingham jail is probably the most famous thing that's been written in the history of activism, certainly in the history of U.S. activism. Every school kid in the United States, I'm guessing probably even a lot of people in Australia, have you heard of the letter from a Birmingham jail?
I think I have, yeah.
Yeah, it's famous. I mean, every U.S. school kid, we have to learn about this in like second grade, because Martin Luther King Jr. protested illegally. He did an illegal protest in Birmingham, Alabama, when they were basically banning Black people from public places, from schools, from hotels, amusement parks. And he gets arrested for illegally protesting. And he's sitting in this jail cell and he pens this letter, basically. And it's funny because a lot of people have totally whitewashed King, and they make King seem like, oh, he's just a minister educating people and being nice all the time. And he was a nice guy in the sense that he was a friendly, warm person in the same way that you are. He was also a radical who was constantly breaking law and getting thrown in jail over and over again, and described by the FBI as the most dangerous man in America. And this letter is a combination. It's really interesting because it talks about civil rights and the importance of standing up against injustice, but it also talks about the dangers of moderates, that there's so many moderates who use the language of complacency to undermine a movement for change by saying, wait, you're pushing too hard. You're pushing too fast. You just have to wait. And it's easy to say wait when the boot is not on your neck. And so he specifically condemns the white moderate in the United States and says, all you white moderates, I'm not saying you don't have good intentions, you do, but you do not understand what it is like to go to a hotel time after time and being told that you and your daughter, even though you're exhausted and you desperately need a place to stay, that you cannot come in because of the color of your skin. You do not want to know what it's like to see a school across the street from your school that is well maintained, that has wonderful teachers, that has a gym, that has a music class, that has all the things that you dream of for your children, and you know your kid can't go to that school. You have to go to the rundown school across the street because of the color of your skin. And if you understood what we were experiencing, you would not say wait, you would say now, right? And that's what the letter was. And he had been saying the same thing, for basically, he wrote that letter in 1963, and he started his campaign in 1955. Like, so for 8 years, he'd been saying the same thing. But one of the reasons that letter, it went viral before virality was even a thing. But I mean, one of the reasons every school kid in the United States now reads this letter and reads about him sitting in this jail, writing this letter, is because he was sitting in a jail, right? If he had written that letter in a nonprofit office, right? If it's a letter, the letter from a nonprofit office, it's like, I don't care. Lots of people write letters from some nonprofit's office. It doesn't matter to me. But it's like the fact that he wrote that in a jail cell. I mean, not that it's not a wonderful letter. It's a wonderful letter, but it just wouldn't have changed the world if not for the fact that he was sitting in a jail. And what Michael Klarman argues is that social movements that are strategic and effective harness the power of that backlash. And honestly, you do this in pretty much every one of your videos. Like, you've captured this value and we talked about this last time, like literally getting whipped. I guess, actually, I don't think you were actually whipped. You just had a guy trying to whip you, right? Is that right?
It was that far away from me. Yeah, he didn't whip me. It was that far away.
But certainly you've been assaulted, you've been carried, you've been spat on. I mean, everything you could possibly imagine that's happened to you. And that's part of the power of your activism. You harness the backlash effect, because a lot of people don't like it when people speak out against injustice when they're part of that injustice. But when they see you're standing out against injustice to the point that you're willing to even physically suffer, that you're willing to sacrifice your own well-being for the cause, then they start thinking, oh, damn, maybe this is serious. Maybe I should pay a little attention to this. And again, all of us can learn from this. And I'm not saying everybody has to go get whipped like you, or go get assaulted or picked up and thrown out of restaurants and grocery stores and slaughterhouses. But all of us need to be willing to deal with that a little bit, because if all of us deal with the backlash a little bit, if all of us are willing to be a little more direct and a little more honest and bear some of that backlash, then you do not have to wear the weight of all that backlash on your own neck, because we can do it collectively. All of us do it together, you know?
Of course.
So you're doing it. I'm glad you have Jack, because I think having like, you know, a partner or family, how's Jack holding up? Is he holding up okay through all this? Because he's getting prosecuted too, right?
Yeah, well, for the restaurant protest, he was charged and he received a spent conviction. So that was the second conviction on his record. So he was actually really lucky to get that as a spent conviction.
What does that mean?
So that means it's a criminal record, but it can only be seen by the courts and the police, I think.
Okay.
So that's like an invisible criminal record. And usually in Western Australia, at least, you only get one chance at getting a spent conviction. If you commit a crime again, the chances of getting another spent conviction is very small. Yeah. So he was really lucky in that sense. But it was just absurd that he was even convicted in the first place, because he was simply there to film the protest. He wasn't asked to leave. The restaurant owner came straight up to him, didn't ask him to leave, went straight for him, grabbed him here, and threw him out and continued to make threats towards him. So it's just so unfair that he had to get that conviction in the first place. But other than that, he's fine. He's glad that he's not involved in this next defamation case, but he was obviously involved in the previous one. So he's just been through that with me. Yeah. And we're just waiting for the outcome of that one.
Yeah. And that's the one we can't talk about. So I want to ask you about it. I just want to explain to the audience why I'm not talking to you about it, but because I want to talk to you about it, and we'll have you on when this is all done. And the reason
I will let you know the moment I can talk about it, and hopefully that is soon.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So why did Jack take the plea? I mean, maybe I should ask Jack this. And not to blame him, for the record. Again, I'm not saying he shouldn't take the plea, because one of the lessons of social movements is 100%, as long as they make an informed decision and they feel good about it, every defendant making an informed decision is making the right decision, and that's different for everybody. So I'm absolutely not blaming him, but why did he feel that he should take the plea, given that he got assaulted and he wasn't even shouting or doing anything that was even arguably disruptive?
Yeah, again, it was a difficult decision for him. The reason he chose to just take the plea was because if he didn't, our lawyer said there was still a risk of him being charged for the refusal to leave, which just sounds absurd that there was even a risk that he would have been. And so obviously if he took it to trial and he was convicted, then there would be no chance that he would have received the spent conviction. And so with the higher likelihood of receiving that spent conviction, he decided to take the plea. Yeah.
And that is a good deal. I mean, being able to have something that is kind of a conviction, but is not even on your record. I mean, that's as good as it's going to get. So like the principle of kind of living to fight another day. Can I ask you, and I should have asked you before, I mean, how's this guy suing you for defamation? Like, everything you said is true. Isn't truth the defense of defamation in Australia?
Unfortunately not, because
really,
I guess I would say because non-human animals don't obviously have any legal rights in our legislation, that calling a non-vegan an animal abuser is actually seen as something that is defamatory.
Wow.
So that's one of the things. I also said that he's no different to a psychopath in response to the disturbing photographs of him cradling a dead pig and just making a mockery out of a murder victim's body and putting his glasses on a pig's head, posing with the head on his shoulder. So apparently that's defamatory too, even though he's clearly making a mockery and being no different to a psychopath holding those victims. And he's also trying to sue me for trespass because of the fact that he'd banned all vegans from his venue. He's trying to claim that any vegan entering his restaurant is trespass, which seems absurd to me because it was simply a public Facebook post. It was more like a statement rather than an official ban on vegans through the legislation. It just seems so absurd to me that that's even allowed to be proposed to the Supreme Court in order to get me for trespass. And there's something about aggravated damages and something like that.
How are you feeling about the case? And do you have representation?
I do have representation. So I have the same civil lawyers that represented me for the previous defamation case. Thankfully, they're doing pro bono for me again.
That's awesome.
Otherwise, I would not be paying any lawyer because it would literally cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to have them represent me for such a massive case. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, they're not animal rights. So again, that makes it quite a struggle in them even just understanding that position because obviously they're not vegan. So yeah, I don't know how I feel. I feel like it's just like, it's obviously so wrong. I mean, this guy's ironically defamed me. He's making profit off having my full name on T-shirts, on merchandise with derogatory words. He said that I ruined his relationship, and his relationship actually ended because of the publicity he was receiving for banning all vegans from his venue. And this was before I set foot in his restaurant. And so he's said on national Australian TV that I've ruined and destroyed his relationship. So I still, to this day, people say, oh, you're the person who ruined that poor chef's marriage. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
How on earth do I have anything to do with this? So it's just so messed up. But I'm not letting it stress me out as much as the previous case. I guess going through the first defamation cases, it's just so foreign. It was just overwhelming and stressful being like, what is going on? Like, this is such a crazy thing to be going through just for speaking up for animals. So I definitely won't let it get to me this time. And I'm just kind of more so going with the flow with this one.
Yeah. For those people who have not been sued, which good for you, because it's not fun to get sued. Getting sued in a civil lawsuit is in many ways harder and more kind of difficult financially, for sure, because, you probably don't have the right to counsel, and generally you have to pay for civil attorneys, and it's hard to find them. And but also just psychologically, because my guess is in Australia, like in the United States, they have a right to basically harass you a lot more because it's not the government on the other side, it's the industry, and so they can do all these things like subpoena you. Are they asking you for documents and all these things?
For the previous defamation case, I had to produce bank statements and financial documents over the past 3 years, along with a whole lot of other stuff. So we'll see what happens with this one. It just hasn't gotten to that point yet.
Yep. So it's super intrusive. They can depose you. And the burden of proof is lower too, generally. So they don't have to prove things beyond a reasonable doubt. They can prove things in the United States, at least, by what's called a preponderance of evidence, meaning the threshold of evidence that's necessary to actually hold you liable is much, much lower. And it's a huge, huge pain in the butt. I don't know if I told you this last time, but Patty Mark, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, she's legendary founder of Animal Liberation Victoria, the person who started the open rescue movement in the 1980s and early 1990s. She's told me that, I mean, she's been charged a bunch of times too. And she inspired a lot of us to do the work we're doing. But she told me that the civil cases have been way harder than the criminal cases, like way harder. Just because of the financial burden and just what you were talking about, just all the entanglements. There's so much entanglement that occurs that just exhausts you and makes you not want to do activism anymore because you're just embroiled in all this dumb legal stuff. It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? And I think we need to find a way to defend activists civilly too, not just criminally. One of the mind-blowing things to me about what you just told me, though, is in the United States, truth is a defense of defamation. And also, unless you can prove the statement someone made can be verified as false. If you just say someone's an asshole, or I don't like someone, or even just like exaggeration saying this person's a monster. I mean, obviously you don't literally mean this person's a monster as in, they're like some sort of dragon or werewolf. You mean, not that dragons and werewolves are monsters. I mean, I'm sure dragons and werewolves are awesome. Like, and relative to what human beings do, dragons and werewolves are great. But you just, when you say something like you're a psychopath, it's not like you're saying I'm asserting that factually he's been diagnosed as a psychopath, although maybe he has, for all we know. I mean, who knows? You're making a point about how disordered the thinking is when you can look at a sentient being, disregard the fact they suffered and cried in agony before they died, and just laugh about it. This poor being who you're joking about the suffering and death of. It's a fair point, but even if you think it's an unfair point, it's your opinion. And the idea that you can be held liable for expressing a political opinion should be super concerning to everyone, regardless of whether they're animal rights activists. Because while today it might be animal rights, tomorrow it might be some other issue. Maybe it's Gaza. Maybe it's Me Too. Maybe it's Black Lives Matter. Or even if you're on the right wing, maybe it's a position about immigrants. You don't like immigrants, and someone's going to throw you in jail because you express an opinion about immigrants. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like the climate, including in the animal rights movement on the left, is becoming like kind of dangerously censorious, in the sense that we're not open enough to the idea that people have to have the right to say what they actually think, right? And in your case is just an extreme example of that, where through saying what you think, you are literally being hauled into court, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. I was just gonna, yeah. Well, yeah, I think, freedom of speech actually doesn't exist in Australia. So it's quite concerning. There's not even a human rights bill in Western Australia and many other Australian states and territories. So I just find that so absurd to try and, bring attention to a truth and obviously express an opinion, but most of it is coming from truth. To be, criminally convicted and going through defamation cases is just insane. And I was just going to add to that, with the previous defamation case, I actually came out of that case defamed because on the plaintiff's lawyer actually slandered me in court and got away with it and produced false evidence to the court, including that I had committed tax fraud. So then, of course, it was out in the media that I'd committed tax fraud, and I haven't done that. And he also selected, because obviously I had to produce my bank statements, which was just absurd in the first place. I wasn't the one trying to claim defamation. So why on earth did I have to produce my bank statements? It was just a full invasion of my privacy, with, a public gallery in the court just looking at all this private information. It was just disgusting. But yeah, of course, the Australian media reported on me being a tax fraud, and in the bank statements, the lawyer only chose a small period of time, which made out that I had donated only $100 to animal charities. So that was published in the media as if all my bank statements had been shown that I had only donated $100. And I'm like, what? I donate more than that. Not that it matters. I've donated my life to speaking up for animals. I shouldn't have to donate, but I agree
completely.
Yeah. And it's just like, wow, I've come out of this completely slandered. And my lawyers told me that I couldn't actually take action against the media, which I find quite absurd, because I feel like they've clearly defamed me. In their headlines, it says Tash Peterson has committed tax fraud.
Yeah.
That's a false statement. Surely I should be able to take action and get that publication removed and a public apology retraction.
Yeah.
And so it's just feel like, again, it just feels so defenseless. Like, what? Yeah. I can't do anything to stand up for myself. I can't speak up about this case. I can't tell the truth publicly yet and explain the full story. Like, obviously I've explained a little bit of it right now, but there is like a bigger picture to this that I'm just silenced about at this point in time.
So why can't you sue them? Because it seems like if Australia doesn't have freedom of speech, why can't you sue these media outlets for tax fraud, or for alleging that you're a tax fraud?
Well, apparently it's because in the finer details of the article, they say the court was told that I had committed tax fraud.
Oh, God.
So because of the way they worded it, in the finer detail, apparently, that allows them to get away with it, which still doesn't make sense to me. Yeah.
I wonder if your lawyers are right about that because, do you know about the Fox News Dominion case in the United States?
No, I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm sure you heard that Donald Trump claimed that the election was stolen from him in 2020. And he came up with all these conspiracy theories about voting machines that had been tampered with, all of which were apparently not true. I mean, there's just no evidence that anyone tampered with any voting machines. But he accused this company called Dominion Voting, which had built these basically ballot boxes, these electronic voting systems across the country, of basically tampering with their machines and adding votes for Biden falsely. There was no evidence of this. And a number of the companies that had been constructing these voting machines, I think there were two of them in particular, they actually lost business because every county that basically is a Republican county no longer wanted to do business with this voting company, which was not a partisan company. They had no political beliefs one way or the other. They just got slandered by Donald Trump. But instead of suing Donald Trump, they actually sued this company called Fox News, Rupert Murdoch, who's actually an Australian. Yeah. And Fox News's main defense was, we didn't say they tampered with the vote. We just said Donald Trump claims they tampered with the vote. But a court ultimately concluded it doesn't matter. I mean, when you're publishing an allegation that has no evidence behind it, you cannot just use the cover that someone alleged. Just like I can't go on social media and say, there are people accusing Tash Peterson of murder. If there's no victim, I don't even know who. I mean, I have to have some evidence behind that. I can't just launder the allegation by saying someone else accused you of murder without actually doing some due diligence myself. And Fox News lost the case, and it wasn't an effective defense. And I know, the First Amendment is actually really strong in the United States. It's really hard to win these defamation cases. So I wonder if your lawyers are just a little too cautious about that. I will say I've had the same situation happen in the United States too. Like there's this publication, it's always like the dumbest and shittiest publications too, that accuse me of being involved in sex trafficking. And I kid you not, here's the basis of it. Oh, you haven't heard this? Yeah.
No.
So they said I think it was just because, who's that guy? That guy that created that, I think it's like some cult called Nexium or something like that. Have you heard of this?
No, I haven't. No.
Yeah, it's this guy who created this sex cult, and it got a lot of celebrities involved. There's like the Jeff Epstein scandal, and then there's this guy who started this group Nexium, and it was just in the media already, and everyone was talking about sex cults. But I kid you not, the only basis they have for this is that at one point during a Zoom call, when a woman who is, I don't even know where, from South America or somewhere, asked me about how to get a visa into the United States. I said, well, there's a lot of ways to get a visa. You can get an H-1B, but that requires an employee to sponsor. You can get a student visa, but you get a university, a university has to pay for that. And all these ways are usually really expensive, like an H-1B visa for employment. I think it costs the company like tens of thousands of dollars. It's ridiculously expensive to get a visa. And I also told her, and by the way, in other ways, you can get married. So if you're in a relationship, and you get married, that's a way to get a visa, which is advice every immigration lawyer will tell anyone trying to come to the United States, that the easiest way to get a visa, 100%, even Donald Trump is okay with people who are married to immigrants getting a visa and coming to the United States. So everybody supported the idea that if you're married, you should get a visa. And that is literally the extent of it. And yet there's this article published saying, oh my God, he's like trying to traffic people in the United States just because I said one of the ways. God. But you're right that there's like so little accountability. And again, a lot of these media institutions, they're taking advertising money from the industry. They're owned by people who have shares or some sort of interest in the media industry and the products this industry is selling. So they're already motivated to try and find ways to tarnish us. And I think one of the important things for us to do is both within the movement and outside of the movement, make sure we come out with the truth. And like I had James ask me on the podcast recently, people have been tarring and feathering him. And it's a terrible thing to do to someone in a lot of ways, in my opinion. Yeah. I don't know what you think of James, but I just think so many people have been bashing him for all this stuff that just isn't true.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's disgusting.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of it's totally fine to criticize, his activism and say like, look, James, you're doing X. I think we should be doing Y in a respectful way. But a lot of this stuff is like, oh, he's like, creating Ponzi schemes. And it's like, no, I know James, like he's not creating Ponzi schemes. And, the way they take these like very, very small and misleading facts and turn them into something dramatically different and vile. When you talked about this tax fraud thing, it just reminded me of all this, that so much of this is happening and a huge part of what we need to do. And that's one of the reasons I started this podcast, because I wanted people like you and James to have a chance to kind of explain yourself in a neutral and non-judgmental way, so people don't believe this nonsense. And it's sad to me that the Australian media picked it up. And if I were your lawyer, I'd definitely sue the hell out of them.
I know. Yeah, I want to. Absolutely. I mean, if I have to find other lawyers to get involved, then I think I should absolutely take action against the media, because, it's just the most dishonest information just spread all across the internet, like even worldwide now, because there's been a lot of YouTubers, I think a lot of them are from the US actually, making videos about this defamation case, reading the media articles and saying, oh, look, she committed tax fraud and she's made X amount of money and only given X amount to animals. She's a scam artist. And it's like, this is not true. People are so easily misled by hearing this information. Oh, it was presented in a court and it's written in the media, it must be true.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's like, wow, false evidence was actually submitted in the Supreme Court of Western Australia. And this lawyer lied and he got caught out actually. The judge found out the next day that I hadn't committed tax fraud, and he found one of the documents and said, he got really angry at the plaintiff's lawyer and said, you have deliberately missed out this document and now there's, lies spread in the media. Like, this is really, really bad on your behalf to do this.
And the problem is no one ever follows a correction, right? That's not going to get the headlines because it's not as sexy or dramatic. No. So just think about like weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and the United States, how, our own government lied. Why do you think people believe these things, even after we know the media and the government have lied so many times? And we know, in this case, a judge literally caught the guy and said, you lied to me. And yet people still believe this stuff. And you see YouTubers posting this stuff. What do you think's going on there?
Well, I think for the main part, it's obviously non-vegans wanting to believe it. They want to believe bad information about vegans and animal rights activists to discredit them. But unfortunately, a lot of people who are vegans, and some of them even previously supporters of me, have messaged me saying, I can't believe you did this. I'm no longer supporting you. And I even clarify and respond to them and say, you have been misled. This is not the truth. I'm going to tell you the truth. And they still believe the media. And I'm just like, this is some of the most anti-vegan media publications. And you're believing anti-vegan publications. Like, what? It's just crazy. How can you not believe what I'm trying to tell you here? So that's where I do get confused. Like, how on earth can they fall for this anti-vegan media publications?
Yeah, part of me wants to say just like F those people, and because I know that's extremely painful.
Yeah.
Like to have it's one thing to have a bunch of non-vegan media attacking you, but to have vegans stab you in the back, that's extremely painful. It's so hard.
It's upsetting,
and it is upsetting because we should be on the same team, and they should understand. Because anybody who's vegan, you've been a victim of disinformation yourself. Just look at the amount of stuff that's put out there by all these like carnivore people about how, vegan, you're going to get sick, you're going to die, and you kill more animals if you're vegan. It's like just so much misinformation. And the notion that you're going to read one article and decide Tash Peterson is a tax fraud because one media article said that you were accused of it, and without diving any deeper into it, it's really, really a problem. But I think, to me, part of the problem, because I think I wish it were the case that all the people who believe these things are just bad people, and there's just the small percentage of people who do this. But I think, honestly, one of the problems is people are losing trust in everything. Like, we just don't know who to trust anymore. Because you look at these episodes of scandal, and there are genuine scandals, and there are genuinely bad people. You're not one of them. I know, because, I've known about you. The first actual conversation I think we ever had was in July, right? Have we talked before?
I don't think so.
I don't know how, because I've watched your stuff a lot for the years. But I've known from the moment I knew you, I mean, because I've seen how generous you've been to me. Like, you don't gain anything from getting arrested or getting in trouble to support me. And you've just always been willing to step up. And I've told you before, I'm just so grateful. And I know it's not about you. It's just about defending other activists and defending the animals first and foremost. And you sacrificed your life for this. So to me, it's like, who cares if she hasn't donated to animal charities? People should be donating to her. She's doing so much work for the animals, right? It's like she's donated her entire life to the cause. And I see someone like James, and I feel the same way. It's like, this guy has contributed so much to the animal rights movement. And, you know, maybe you don't agree with everything he's done. Maybe you think one tactic or one strategy isn't the perfect tactic. That's fine. But the notion that he has to give more when he's already given so much is, to me, just, we absolutely should be pushing people to give more. But there's a way to do that in a way that's supportive and not undermining some of the people who have made the biggest sacrifices in the movement. And I include you in that category. I include James. I don't know why there's so many Australians, you know, like Joey, for example. I mean, even though he's technically in the UK now, like, he's getting in all this trouble too. And I'm going to have him on the podcast sometime soon too, because he's getting charged and just messed up. The UK is turning kind of wild too. I don't know if you've been following what's happening to the Animal Rising folks, but the hammer's coming down on them too. But
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's just wild how much of this stuff is happening. And I think our movement needs to find ways to, like, deal with the misinformation so that all of us can support each other more, you know, instead of just seeing something that's printed somewhere online and believing in and saying, oh, they're done now, I can't even talk to them. Did you lose anyone close to you as a result of this stuff? Or was it mostly just like random vegans that you didn't know?
Yeah, just random vegans I didn't know.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've had some people who are reasonably close to me, you know, turn because of misinformation. And it's a tough feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awful. That sucks.
Definitely sucks. So what's next then for you? You're under all these community orders. Can you still do the same activism? I mean, and you're stuck in Western Australia.
Yeah, look, I have to say I definitely need to be careful. I can still do disruptive protests, but yeah, I just don't know what they're going to look like now that if I, you know, for example, get charged with trespass again, it's another community order, if not jail time. So I feel like in the meantime, I do need to be careful. And eventually when I can leave Western Australia, I'll go to somewhere like Victoria where I'm unlikely to face any of the legal issues that I experience here. So at least I have those other options. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure what's next. I think at the moment, Jack and I are just sort of focusing on our outreach and bringing a bit of creativity into our outreach, like the farmer costumes and a few different sort of social experiments like that. So that's sort of what's in the pipeline at the moment.
Well, tell us about that, because that's a wild video. And we previewed it earlier, but tell us about what happened. I mean, honestly, it's so good. I almost feel like, did you stage this? Like, and I know you didn't.
No.
But it felt so good. I was like, this had to be staged. There's no way this guy is like talking shit about Tash Peterson, not realizing he's talking to Tash Peterson.
I promise you, it's not staged. It like happened in spare of the moment, and we went out the next day again dressed as farmers, and it happened again. Another guy came up bad mouthing me.
Okay, we're not giving the audience the context. Can you just
explain?
Explain exactly what happened to people. So, because we're talking insider baseball right now. We need to explain to the audience what exactly happened, because it's wild.
Of course. So Jack came up with this outreach idea that he wanted to do, and that was to pretend to be an animal farmer and show and be like a transparent animal farmer, and actually as a way to show people slaughterhouse footage. So to get an audience that we wouldn't usually get as animal rights activists out in the streets to watch slaughterhouse footage. So to play the friendly farmer role and get people to see the footage and sort of have, I guess, a conversation that may or may not turn into animal rights. But either way, they've seen the slaughterhouse footage. And he's brilliant at it. Like, he's a natural actor. He did it so well. Anyway, so my position for that day was just to be filming his conversations. And it was only an hour before we were going to go out. And I said, actually, I think I should dress as a farmer as well. So it just looks like we're a couple together. So it kind of suits, the look a bit more. So I just put my like a random outfit on that looked farmerish. And so as I was filming Jack have a conversation.
And you got big sunglasses on so people can't see your face, obviously.
Yeah.
It's so weird because it almost feels like the dumb Superman costume where whenever I watch Superman, I'm like, come on, it's Clark Kent. He just has glasses on. It's the same damn guy. And when I see him in those sunglasses, I'm like, come on, it's still Tash Peterson. She just has glasses on. But it actually works.
Exactly.
It works.
It did. I didn't think it was really going to work, but I thought, well, if I were in front of the camera trying to pretend to be the farmer, I would absolutely have put more effort into the disguise, like wearing a wig, etc. Try different makeup or something. But I was like, this is good enough as the camera person because I can just hide behind the camera, not give away who I am, and everyone's focused on Jack. And Jack isn't as recognizable, and he obviously put in effort with his costume. But anyway, so this guy just came up to me saying, how much he hates me and what great work I'm doing as a farmer. And then talking about how
speaking
his
of good acting,
friends,
your response is golden too. Like this line where you say something like, that bitch should end up in a slaughterhouse too. And he's like, yeah, it's so good. This is why
I was completely unprepared.
I mean, I didn't actually think it was staged, but I was like, this is so good. It feels like it has to be staged.
Yeah. Well, again, like I did not expect any conversation. So I was so unprepared with the costume and what I was going to say to people because I was like, I'm just going to be the camera person. Like everyone's talking to Jack. But no, so many people came up to me. So I was like, oh shit, like I'm put on the spot right now. I have to pretend that I heavily hate myself because I'm an animal farmer right now. And then, this guy proceeded to talk about how his farmer friends were saying if I came onto their property, I would disappear. And I guess it was quite unusual actually hearing that in person. I'm so accustomed to death threats and all that sort of thing, but it's always online. Like I don't think anyone's really had the courage to come up to my face and threaten me in that way. So actually hearing it and then just playing along with it was like, what is happening right now? This is so unusual, but it doesn't really bother me because I'm just used to it. Like it's all just talk, so whatever. But it did happen the very next day again when we went out filming. Another guy came up just as we were setting up the camera and started to badmouth me and said that I should get a bullet to the head. So that was quite interesting again. Yeah.
So were you scared about these people saying these things? Because I mean, they're threatening to murder you, and it's you. I mean, it's not like your friend. It's not another animal rights activist. It's not vegans in general. It's like specifically they say they want to kill you.
Surprisingly, it didn't scare me or disturb me at all. I don't know. I just like, it's just talk. Like these people, they want to let out their anger and they see these animal farmers and they're like, what a perfect person to badmouth, one of the most well-known vegans in our city. I hate Tash Peterson and let's badmouth her. I think they just like want to let out their guilt and anger towards me. So I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing that they think of me every time. That's awesome. Like keep talking about me because you're only helping spread the message. I did consider the second. But
I mean, they have sued you. They tried to jail you. I mean, are you worried that one of these people is actually not just talking and actually will do something?
Oh yeah, potentially. That's in the back of my mind sometimes. I know, all it takes is one person who is actually genuine in their threat. And I have no doubt that maybe there is someone out there, but I can't dwell on that and think about that because that's just going to drain me and make me feel uncomfortable whenever I go out in public. I mean, it really wasn't that long ago where it felt like I was receiving a lot of death threats, and it was like in the earlier stages of my activism. So it was quite new to me. And I remember even just going out for a walk down the street, I would be really paranoid.
Scared, yeah.
And I remember after that, I was like, I can't keep living like this. I can't let this get to me. I'm going to be okay. Like, just don't think about it. So
it's that easy for you. Just don't think about it.
Pretty much.
I just don't think, what advice? Because I think a lot of people go through something similar, not exactly that, but they hear someone talking shit about them in their school or in their workplace because they're vegan or they care about animals. And it sits in their head and it sits in their soul. It drains at them just thinking, oh my God, people don't like me, or they want to hurt me, or they are going to punish me because of the things I believe and the things that I know are right. And, I think a lot of people struggle with coping mechanisms. You seem to be coping extremely well, to the point that you can listen to someone saying they're going to kill you and not be fazed by it. And there's got to be something you've learned beyond just don't think about it. What do you do to make sure you don't think about it? Like, do you meditate? Do you do yoga? What do you do?
Nothing at this point in time. I did get into meditation earlier last year, and I actually did 40 minutes of meditation for 6 months straight. Wow. And then life got
every
busy.
Day.
And yes, every day
40
for
minutes
6
is
months.
A lot. That's good.
It is. Yeah. So 2 20-minute sessions. And it's something that I've been meaning to get back into. And now over a year has passed and I still haven't done it. Yeah. But that definitely did help me with my mental health and just, being in nature every day. I'm lucky to live next to a really beautiful spot along the river where I go walking in the trees or I go to the beach. So there's all those little things that really help me. But I think it's definitely easier said than done. But I think just having that perspective of, if someone can talk negatively about me, then that really just goes to show how powerful I am as an activist. And it's a good thing that people talk about me because that brings more exposure to animal rights. So I think looking at it from that perspective, if people are willing to make such serious threats towards me, then it's like, well, obviously they're intimidated because it's always coming from the animal farmers or the people involved in these very industries. And if they want me gone, it's because they don't want the truth getting out there. So damn, that's pretty powerful to have people think that way, even though, of course it's scary.
That's fucking brilliant. And that's actually you independently discovered something that social movement theory discovered. Because in the theory of nonviolence and nonviolent direct action and the backlash thesis, one of the things they talk about in terms of basically preparing a movement for the backlash is for people to see the backlash as something good. That if you see it as something, and obviously, it's hard, and you don't want to lie to yourself. If someone cuts your arm off, they'll think oh, this is beautiful. I don't feel any pain because it's going to hurt when they cut your arm off. But if you see the purpose behind it, it's so much easier to sacrifice. Just like, if you're working out and you feel like there's some pain, but you realize, okay, but I'm going to be fitter or I'm going to feel healthier. Then you have that goal in mind. You realize, okay, this pain I'm feeling, this discomfort from working out has a purpose. Or you're studying really hard for some exam and okay, my goal is to become a lawyer. So I know it's really, really frustrating. This is really hard right now, but I'm going through all this hardship because there's some goal. That is actually really crucial. And there's literally a manual that this group called Canvas created. They're the ones who revolted against Slobodan Milosevic and brought down this dictator. And they faced enormous repression, like people getting murdered and jailed all the time. And they said one of the things we had to do is just prepare people ahead of time and say, look, bad stuff's going to happen. And it is part of the process. It is just part of the process of growth. Yeah. And it's just, again, it comes back to what I said at the start of this podcast. Gandhi believed that the most dangerous thing is for people to ignore us. And if they're attacking you and they're trying to bring you down, even if they're threatening you, not saying it's not unpleasant. It absolutely is unpleasant. And all of us should feel entitled to, again, get that time where you can walk in the woods or go to a hotel and breathe a little and feel safe. But if you understand that that is actually part of the process of change and you've made progress by getting from a point where people are ignoring you to the point that people are threatening you, of course, at the end, we want people to be won over, to be convinced that we're right. And we will, because the arguments are so strong. They're so strong. If we have a conversation about this, nobody can defend gas chambers. Nobody can defend scalding animals alive, eviscerating animals alive. And one of the geniuses of your work is that you're willing to bear the backlash that gets us to that real conversation. So I think that's brilliant. I think that's really good advice. Just understand the hardship you're going through as a purpose, and it's just turn it into something good because it shows you that you're getting somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's awesome. Yeah. By the way, another thing about meditation I'll say is, you know what they say about people who don't have time for a half an hour of meditation, right? Have you heard this? Yeah. They
I
say,
think I
if
have.
you don't have
Yeah.
time for half an hour of meditation, then you have to do an hour.
Yeah. I know there's no excuses for me to not do it. I just have to get back into it and create
If
that
you're
habit
so
again.
stressed that you don't have time for a half hour of meditation or 40 minutes of meditation, then you probably should be doing 120 minutes. Do more. And I
Exactly.
swear to God, like every time in my life where I felt that way, it's honestly, it's like working out too. I don't know. Do you have a workout? I feel like you and Jack are probably
Yeah, I
working out.
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
The same thing with working out. If you don't have time to work out for 20 minutes, then work out for 40 minutes. Because it's just, the more stressed and the more you feel like you're being constrained, the more you have to make sure your physical and mental health are really strong. And so if you're stressed, you don't have time for stuff, then investing a little more and making sure you can withstand that pressure is actually worth it in the long term. So I'm a great believer in meditation. So maybe this can be the little catalyst for you and Jack. Do you and Jack meditate together?
I feel like because we both go through phases of doing it, and Jack's been into meditation a lot longer than I have, and he's the reason I started doing it. But I feel like when I'm in the habit of meditating, he isn't, and then it'll be vice versa. But we should try together. We should create a goal together to do it.
Yeah, group meditations are awesome. And I haven't meditated with too many people I've been in relationships with. When I have, it's been awesome. It's like Priya and I used to meditate together, and it was like one of the most powerful experiences. We come out, because when you come out of meditation, you feel this like clarity and peacefulness, and having someone you love around you in that time, it's really powerful, because you feel like connected to each other. Because in the same way that going on a walk in nature, which I think is also really valuable. I'm glad you guys live near beautiful places, because it just reminds us of why we're fighting, because we need more places like this, Like I'm living in San Francisco, which is a concrete jungle, and I don't spend enough time in beautiful places. But every time I do, I think to myself, man, I need to get out of here more, because this is why we fight, because we're trying to protect the beauty on this earth. So, yeah.
Definitely.
Well, do you have any other final thoughts? Any other things that you wanted to talk about? What can we do to support you and Jack because do you have any other ongoing criminal cases? I guess you have this defamation case, two defamation cases, one that is just waiting for the verdict, right? Or the outcome. Another defamation case that's ongoing. Are there any other cases you're involved in?
There's one, it's not necessarily a case. There's actually one more criminal charge that I've received. And there's been a little bit of a mistake in the court system, and they actually have convicted me when I was trying to get the charge dropped.
Wow.
And it's been ongoing for months. I keep telling my lawyer, I keep saying, look, they keep warning me that they've suspended my driver's license because I haven't paid this fine, but, I never pled guilty to the conviction in the first place. And this conviction was actually a result of the liquor barring notice that I had put on me for a 12-month period. And that was as a result of the restaurant disruption that we spoke about earlier. So essentially, whenever I protest in any place that has a liquor license, the liquor enforcement and police will misuse the liquor barring notice against me and bar me from every liquor license venue in Australia. So that includes obviously restaurants who have a liquor license, pubs, etc. So essentially, I was in a liquor venue when I had the barring notice in place. It was just a very relaxed music festival. Jack and I were sitting down on a picnic rug, ready to watch one of my favorite bands. And then security comes behind me and says, Tash, you have to leave. We know you have a liquor barring notice. And a police were on the outside of the venue. Is that because someone just
recognized you and reported you or something?
I would say so, yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. So, the police were on the outside and, they charged me in that moment. And again, that was just really oh my gosh, can't even just go and see one of my favorite musicians without getting done. So, other than that, it's just that one at the moment. Thankfully, there's nothing else at this point in time, but who knows? That might change very soon.
Yeah, that's another aspect of the criminal justice system. I mean, it's almost farcical to call it the criminal justice system, because all over the world, I hear the same stories in China and Canada with Jenny McQueen, in the UK, obviously with the Anna Rising folks, in Australia with you and Chris. And I know Chris Delforce is going through some wild stuff right now too, with the attempt, this injunction where they're trying to prevent him from releasing video footage. It's like, how can you do that? But part of what happens in these systems is they make so many stupid errors that are hard for you to fix. And it's just, even before you get to the punishment stage, but even before you've been found guilty, they just make stupid mistakes and then blame you for them.
Yeah.
And the idea that you could be held liable and have this, liquor barring thing and have your driver license suspended when you did not actually plead guilty.
Yeah.
Is an example of exactly that. Franz Kafka, like a famous existentialist from 100 or so years ago, he wrote this book called The Trial, which is about this experience in modern life where these big, powerful bureaucracies, and honestly, the worst and most violent bureaucracy on the face of the planet Earth is animal farming. It's this convoluted system with all these silly rules and restrictions and practices that don't make any sense. Like, if you're too little, we will just smash your head into the ground until you die. If you're a mother pig, we're going to selectively breed you and genetically engineer you so you have too many babies and they can't even feed themselves because you can't produce enough milk. We'll keep pushing your body to produce more and more. It's like, no, that can't be real. This is some weird horror movie where you've created this insane system that doesn't actually exist, right? It's like, no. This is literally a real world system that was engineered by the industry. But so much of it is just like so mind-bogglingly stupid that the cruelty is almost laughable, because, the idea that you should be punished when you did not actually plead guilty and you've not actually been found liable. I mean, that's just another way the industry and systems stop people from fighting. But that's also why it's so important for, one, the movement to support you and other people like you, but two, for us to take your example and say, like, look, and I'm not saying everyone's going to fight quite as hard as you, but whatever your struggles and your obstacles, and that same thing that's happening to you, someone treating you unfairly, maybe your workforce says, like, oh, you can't talk about veganism anymore. It's like, I didn't even say anything that negative, and your boss is telling you can't talk about veganism. It's like, just understand that you can get through this, in the same way that you're going to get through this liquor license thing, or this defamation action. Just, that's one thing I'm sure about, and the reason I'm sure is because at the end of the day, you've got the truth behind you. And the beautiful thing about the truth is, we don't have to work that hard to defend the truth. We don't have to contort ourselves into all these different twists. We don't have to constantly hide things or pretend we're doing something we're not, the way the industry does and the way animal abusers have to do all these things, because they're not telling the truth. The truth is so beautifully and powerfully simple. And so that is the key thing, that even with all this nonsense they're throwing at you, just remember that. And remember that there are a lot of people, including me, who are going to support you no matter what. So, yeah, I'm sorry. That sounds super shitty for them to like convict you for something that you didn't even plead to. But
yeah. And as I said, like, this happened months and months ago. And I obviously told my lawyer straight away, the moment I received the conviction papers in the mail, I said, what is happening here? Why have I been convicted? And she said, look, I've submitted it in the court. I just adjourned the case. So I don't know how they've convicted you. Let me sort it out. And still, 4 or 5 months later, it's not sorted out. So yeah, it's just a bit frustrating.
Yeah. Someday I'll tell you the story. We don't have time today, and this is not about me. It's about, this show is about you, but I'll tell you, did I ever tell you the story about the trial that never happened, and where a judge held me liable $300,000 for rescuing 2 turkeys and forgot that I did not have a trial? Yeah. I kid you not. There's a judge that just decided to hold me liable and forgot that we didn't have a trial. She just said, I'm now holding you liable for stealing. And it's like, wait, we didn't have a trial yet, Your Honor. And she just ignored it and forgot it. But
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's wild.
Wow.
But a lot of it has to do with what you were saying, which is just these non-vegans, they want to find a way to make us look bad, because it's their own guilt, their own self-doubt. That same judge who held me liable for $300,000+ or $270,000+, I think was the actual amount. I think it was 2. I don't remember the exact amount, because I have so many judgments against me. But throughout her entire opinion, where she's ruling that I'm liable for stealing these 2 turkeys, she keeps talking about how everybody on our side of this issue is a vegan. They're all vegans. You know, all their witnesses are vegans. It's just vegans on this side, as if that's a bad thing, you know? But you could just tell the insecurity and the defensiveness that I feel bad about this. And so I don't like the fact that all these vegans are telling me what to do and trying to show me these horrors that are being inflicted on animals. So we have to punish them for making me feel bad. But that's the way power works.
Yep, it is.
All right. Tash, this has been awesome. Any final thoughts? Any other things that we can do to support? Obviously, follow your Instagram. You've got a YouTube channel. Anything else? Any big projects coming up that you want to tell people about?
No, nothing in the works at the moment. So I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, keep it up. You're super inspiring. I'm really grateful to you for your activism for animals and for spending some time with us. And yeah, I mean, after all this stuff unfolds of the defamation actions, you can actually start talking about these cases. I'd love to have you on again and hear about this crazy story.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
Thank
Until
you
then,
so much.
my friend. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We don't have to hurt animals. You can protect them. We don't have to kill them. We can care for them. And that's who we're meant to be, right? That's who we are when we're at our best. We're caring for each other and for the other living beings of this earth and not hurting them.